Welcome everyone, and thank you again. I hope you've all had a great morning session. There's been some phenomenal speakers. Been speaking to a lot of people out in the foyer as well. So good to hear all your feedback and that you've enjoyed our speakers to date. I'll be honest, I'm kind of excited by this panel. I think the only thing that's missing is some cheese and wine. I think it'll be good. We've got a few questions, but we're going to throw it open as a Q&A towards the end because I think there's so much knowledge up here, and I think there's going to be so many amazing questions that come from the audience as well. So I'm going to open it up. We've done intros. I'm sure you all know these faces. These are change makers in our industry, and I'm feeling pretty special to be up here right now, to be honest. So I'm a bit starstruck. Fangirl. I'm going to move in. So we're going to throw to you, Val. I'm going to throw one question just to open it up. And that is, what is an experience economy and why is it so important?
Look, one of the major themes that has emerged from all of our conference presentations this morning, apart from the fact that we're all thinking about words that we haven't, such as omni-channels, hands up who'd really thought about that word before coming today. No, I can see 3 hands. So it's wonderful to be introduced to that concept. But actually what's also been emerging from all of the conversations is the critical important nature of experience within the economic environment we live and work within on a day-to-day basis. So what is an experience economy? Well, I thought I'd explain by using my potato analogy. So I am right now holding a potato in my hand. It's a very fine Desiree potato, apparently, someone's told me. I want you to all put your hands up in the air right now and visualize that you yourselves are holding a beautiful potato. Hands up, everyone. Check out that potato in your hand. Feel the smooth texture of the skin. Look at the beautiful red skin and think about the waxy interior of your potato. I can't believe I got you to all put your hand up and pretend to hold a potato. No, why am I talking about a potato? Because back in feudal times, okay, let's take a walk down the path. In feudal times, the potato merchant grew the potato in their backyard. They walked to the corner of a major trade route and they exchanged their potato for something else. That's how trade began. That was the start of our economic ecosystem. Feudal Desiree the potato merchant, let's call her that. Okay, jump forward. The transport revolution has struck. People are able to travel further. Desiree suddenly has a lot of competition. So she's not just competing with the person over the road. She's competing with someone on the other side of the country. Jump further forward and you've actually got potatoes imported from other countries. Competition is really tough for potato merchants in a world that has become global and connected. So here we are today. I can see Sam holding a phone up right here, right now. We are all living our lives through our phones, like it or not. And you heard from Amanda this morning. That is the prime consumer vehicle of our times. So we're living through our phones and we're comparing our lives to others. Every day we compare what we wear, what we eat, where we go, the experiences, the lifestyle. We are comparing with everyone else and the world is starting to homogenize. So we're all starting to wear the same things, act the same way, desire the same things. So our appetite as consumers and community members is all becoming very similar because of the interconnectedness of our daily lives. So what are the savvy potato merchants doing today to combat that, to survive in a world that's so deeply contested and homogenizing so rapidly? Well, they're thinking about the experience that they're providing with their potato merchant stall. And I actually know someone who does this, so I'm basing this on a real person. So they're providing a beautiful fit out, a gorgeous environment, which is photographable. You want to go in there and take a selfie. They're providing great customer service. They're providing interactive activities. They're educating. They're building customer relationships. They're building a community, and that community is loyal, actually loves this potato community they're part of. They're participating. They're always going there. The potatoes actually taste better because they've purchased it from contemporary leading-edge Desiree, who is incredible because she understands that experience is the prime value that we have today. Experience and attention is absolutely prime when it comes to form of capital exchange, and the transactions of goods and services are secondary, and they hang off the side of experience. So that is what contemporary retailers are doing. It's about lifestyle, about community and loyalty. It's not about just exchanging that potato or exchanging that service for money. It's not about transaction. So there's my little potato story to understand why experience economy is critical. And what is it? And why is it more important than ever before? Because what we as human beings desire is life more interesting. That is what every single one of us in this room wants from their life. They want unique experiences, experiences that are interesting. And when experiences are interesting, they'll take a photo. They'll go to an event just to take a photo. They'll share it. And they'll actually become your advocates in your communities and your greatest fans. And they will help you sell, and they will help you with your transactions. So experience economy is critical. If you're not buying into it and delivering it within your work as a retailer, within your work as someone in a business association or a council or a place manager, or someone in any way working within the governance of Main Streets, then you are falling behind. So there's my little potato story. Thank you for listening to my potato TED Talk.
Thanks for that, Valli. And I do look forward to later on LinkedIn finding, you giving a better explanation, because I know you took a photo of it this morning and left it as a bit of an opener of what am I going to talk about. So thank you. Katie, anything more that you wanted to contribute to? Valli summed it up pretty well, and Dean, any further comments?
I think I'm from the state of the pink eye, so rather than the Desiree. But, I didn't bring one because I wasn't allowed to win. Oh, you thought I was going to get it out of my pocket, didn't you? So I think, Tasmania has long been a visitor economy state. So to move it, and the strong movers in that space have been experience managers and been experience, designers and curators. So as a whole state, we've sort of fed from that. Team?
That story, I saw your LinkedIn post this morning and wondered where she was going with that. But you're so right. I mean, if you're just selling stuff and providing transactions for customers, I think you're going to miss the next decade of experience, wanting to connect with your place, wanting to connect with traders. So it's very much heading in that experience direction. So think beyond transactional and think about how you can connect with your place and your community and customers.
Yeah, if you take one thing away from this conference, it's that feeling you got when you looked at that fake potato you had in your hand, but what it means. That's what's important.
Well said, thank you. And we'll move into the next question. Katie, I might throw this one to you because obviously being City of Hobart, it'd be great to hear your history here. So how does a main street or town centre determine what their own unique experience economy is?
Thank you. So I don't come from a local government background. I come from a commercial background and spent many years in the tourism industry. And we used to look at essentially a data-driven approach to understanding what experiences we would even want to offer when it comes to our experience economy. So one of the sort of key things I think that are really important is to know your market and know your segments. And there's plenty of great providers of data out there that can help you understand not only who your population is, but who your transient population is, which is also really important. Once you do that, it's about identifying then, are there sub-segments or tribes within that group? And the tribes are the really fun ones. They're the ones that we get to really genuinely go and design experiences for. So as a main street or as a city, really knowing that customer. And one of my favourite quotes from a great book, which is all around outside in. So rather than staring at ourselves and thinking that we know everything, it's about your opinion, although interesting, is completely irrelevant. So you actually need to go and talk to your communities. You need to go and talk to your users of these spaces. And really interestingly enough, your retail shops and your council service members and customer service members will actually be able to verbalise to you who these potential segments are. So they're the ones that speak to them every day. I've got a nice little working group going with tattooists, beauticians and baristas. And they're the ones that basically give you the vibe of the tribes in the city. Obviously, it's a certain segment that we're after at the moment because, you know, anyone can have a coffee, anyone can have a tattoo.
Millennials?
Maybe. 42, apparently. 42 is the magic number, if you were here early this morning. So it's about really understanding that, going and understanding what is their mandatory, what is it that they want to actually come to your main street for. When they get there, what's got to be there. So it could be end-of-ride trips, facilities, it could be, you know, just making sure that there's really great wayfinding. Then you've got to go, what are the add-ons? Why would I choose that street over that one? Why Hobart's a very small city, and we often get the rebuttal around, but there's 2 hours free parking over at Eastern Shore. And it's like, okay, well, actually, what is it that is important for you in order to be there? Really, let's talk to the people that we want to attract. And then create a customer journey for them. So really think about from arrival, even pre-arrival, then arrival, during their experience, and then after their experience, how do they actually start to chart that path through your main street? And feedback. Yeah. That's probably the start of how you might build that.
I might just jump in there because you had to bring up the P word, the parking word. I'm surprised it's the first time. We're at 2:15, and it's the first time it's come up today, which I think is a great way moving forward, that it's not all about parking anymore. And Katie, I really appreciate some of those points that you said, because I think there's a lot of people in the room today that really spend a lot of time engaging one-on-one with their businesses. So hearing this information coming from our panellists, so important, you know, that time, that one-on-one engagement where you do struggle, that, you know, it is hard, you're waiting for the barista or the owner of the business to finish talking to their customers, and you end up standing there for 40 minutes just to get a 10-minute conversation. Or, as I like to say, there's always a butcher. The famous butcher is on every street, but it's about taking that time to really engage with your traders, I find. But Dean, I don't know if you wanted to add to that as well.
Just that the traders can be the celebrities, if you like, of your local town centre. So sometimes that might mean stepping outside your comfort zone, like we heard this morning. But you're much more likely to go back to someone who, you know, remembers your name ideally, but is good to deal with and is more than just handing over your money and getting something in return. You're making a connection, or sometimes they might be entertainers as well, but making sure that those traders realise they're not just selling stuff, they're selling the experience.
Yeah. Well said, thank you. Dean, I'm going to throw the next question to you. How do you develop an experienced economy with little to no money? And obviously you guys have been doing some phenomenal work with Town Team Movement, so I'd be great to share an experience if you can here. I know that the team over in Perth have been phenomenal, and we're following it with a keen eye over here, so please, would love to hear some.
So I worked in local government for 12 years, and I've always been and always was a outcomes person. Very much, what's the outcome? Let's make that happen. But what I've sort of started to realise is that the process is sometimes important. It's a bit of a shock to me, always being an outcomes person, but the process I'm referring to is, rather than coming up with ideas of what worked in Brisbane or Hobart or Geelong, start with what you already have. So start with those skills and resources and opportunities and strength of the place. Then see if you can craft something really creative and interesting from that. So firstly, you're working with the local people and the strengths of the place. But then if you can identify what they might be, you know that you've already got access to them. So if I wanted to copy something from Geelong, it might mean, you know, finding $10,000 or going for a grant or something like that. That's a good idea. It could possibly work. But if you start with what you've already got, then you know if there's a good idea that comes from that, then you can actually make it happen. So that's one of the things that we talk about with our local groups, the town teams. Don't start with what the idea is, or don't wish for something. Start with something small, but start with something creative and fun based on the skills, resources, connections, and maybe a little bit of money you've got to start with. So that's a way to get stuff happening and build momentum.
Thanks for that, Dean. And Valli, is there anything you'd like to add? Because obviously with your abundance of experience as well in that space.
I always like to think in scenarios, it's really important not to start with an idea. Actually, you need to start with collaboration, and then you need to get people collaboratively ideating together, and then the idea that you try to carry forward was a shared idea, and everyone has buy-in, so that it's, because a person with an idea ends up a person on their own delivering a project or something and exhausting themselves and driving themselves into the ground. But if it was shared from the onset, then you have a pool of willing people to help you. And then that fatigue, because we have consultation fatigue. Hands up who works with council, from council. How fatigued are your communities right now? They're consulted out, aren't they? They're exhausted. They don't want to hear from you anymore. They want you to solve their problems, but they don't want to any more consultation. They'd rather just see some action, and they want to see some leadership. But, you know, making sure that that you don't fall into the trap of starting with your idea and thinking your idea is going to solve their problems. Actually understand what the problem is, and then unlock the collaborative landscape so that they're solving their own local problems. And you'll get much better outcome and much better bang from your small buck.
I have to agree, and obviously wearing my Wyndham hat when I'm not Mainstreet president, very much so about community engagement, so important. I know a number of my team are here, and they've recently, in the probably last 12 to 18 months, have been doing some serious engagement, and we're just seeing such huge turnouts to all our activations or placemaking initiatives that are being run. So it's been great.
How many people turned up at Meet Me and Tiny Eat the other day?
13,078 clicked through the gate.
13,000 people.
phenomenal.
That's incredible.
It was very good, and one of my officers, one of my amazing team members who's here today delivered that, and that was Phoebe. So again, a huge shout out to everyone working on the ground. It's not just Phoebe, there's a number of you in the room that are doing so much for your local organisations and traders associations, and you're working with your local councils as well to really manage that. I'm going to throw this one to Katy, and you've sort of thrown me as well, because I thought you had a longer history with government, but happy to hear your thoughts. So how would you advocate council or state government to have a better experience economy?
I'm glad I've thrown you. Sorry about that. So I suppose I can take it from a visitor economy perspective, because I've been campaigning in that space for quite some time. So when you really, and I think their knowledge and their understanding of how important it is to generate an experience for permanent residents is becoming just as important. Certainly during COVID, where you had a 5-kilometre radius here, we were blessed in Hobart to have a slightly different experience. We just couldn't go anywhere. So for us, I think the state government are really conscious of this idea of, you know what, it's outside my front door, it's across the street, it's around the corner. And so the ability to use data in intelligent ways to let them know that you know who it is that's in your space and why a change might be important is a really important linchpin in getting that state level thinking about it. The other one is the relationships with ministers. So I was fortunate to be working in the ICT industry for a number of years, and the Minister for Technology in Tasmania had a range of other portfolios that weren't as successful as the ICT industry. So I gave him good news stories for about 3 years, which was fantastic. But what that provided me was the opportunity to engage him in experiences. So find the topic that the minister is most passionate about, and perhaps even their pet topic, and create an experience around that, and then invite them. You'd be surprised at how often they'll show up. Yeah,
I really like that. That's great food for
it's
thought.
It's evil and devious, but it's fabulous. Yeah,
we'll use what we can. Dean, Valli, anything you wanted to add to that? I know, obviously, in both of your fields, you would have definitely come across this.
I think it's not just about kind of lobbying and advocating to, you know, state governments and ministers. Don't forget that your local ward members are the closest to communities of all of the political representation, and they feel really emotionally connected. Working with council members where possible really early will mean that your outcomes that you achieve is a feather in their cap. That will result in really great visibility, great political capital associated with your projects, but more money down the track in future years, right? So instead of viewing council members as sometimes, it's a really diverse crop of people that run for council for different reasons, but every single council member is a potential advocate for your business association, your project, your initiative, and view them as potential champions and give them an opportunity to get involved early. And it can really help you with your long game.
Great answers, thank you. Dean, I'm going to throw the next one to you. How do you bring vibrancy to your main street? I feel that this is the million-dollar question. So I'm keen to hear from all three of you on this one, to be honest, because it is, and it's so, I guess, to each area, it will be different. So really keen to hear.
Yeah, I mean, vibrancy is one of those buzzwords, and sometimes it's a little bit hard to quantify exactly what it means, but I sort of think about it as people, really. So I think it's pretty hard to have a vibrant street without the people, and then it's sometimes fairly easy to have a vibrant atmosphere or experience when you've got lots of people together, like in this room. So for me, it's about getting people together. And probably one thing I didn't touch on in the answer on finding low-cost solutions is the residents of the precinct. Often they're massive opportunities that maybe you haven't thought about or mobilised or excited yet. And just a little story to illustrate that, South Fremantle is a really interesting place, obviously in Western Australia, just south of Fremantle, hence the name. But a street that was really struggling. And the traders, there were some really good traders moving into the area, but one of the town teams there, the South Freo Corner Pocket, during COVID thought, what the hell are we going to do to get people to come to our place? And they talked to local musos, they looked at what the assets of the area were and realised that the assets of our area are the poets and musos who live in South Freo. We've got local businesses here that could deal with more customers or would love more customers. But we've also got these cute little houses off to the side streets. So what could we do with that? And someone had the idea of let's create a festival. Let's create a porch fest using the local musos, using the local poets and creatives. And instead of trying to find a huge venue, because we don't have a big venue on that strip, let's use the porches and the houses as the venues. So they actually somewhat illegally shut down a street and invited people to come along, and they thought, it'd be great if we got 100 or 200 people there. The first time, with very little promotion, the claim is 0 budget and 0 meetings. They got 1,200 people to turn up. Now, the musos during COVID were just starved for attention, so they loved it because they were out there playing, seeing their friends and having a chance to connect. But the businesses they thought, well, what's in it for us, really? But they had a really clever mariachi band that at the end of all the performances, mariachi band enticed everyone back to the main street, and the businesses had a booming trade, particularly the pubs and restaurants, as you could imagine. But it was just such a great example of residents and businesses working together to create an experience and help the local town centre and help the local businesses. And sure, things like that don't change that strip overnight, but 5 years ago that strip was dead and now it is booming, and you've got new businesses moving into the area because they see the energy, they see the atmosphere and they see the experience and they want to be part of that. So work with those local residents, find a town team, find your champions and help make it easier for them to do stuff.
Yeah, really well said, Dean. More than happy. I'd love to hear from you ladies as well.
We've both probably got value adds. Sometimes I think events are actually can be a detriment to vibrancy because from an economic perspective, in a Main Street environment, a single event will not actually deliver. Something we learnt in the neighbourhood project was that events actually don't necessarily elevate social capital in the area because people go with friends, they socialise with friends, they go home. Often those events are held out of hours at times when businesses aren't even open. So being more strategic about your activation and events and ensuring it's tied in with the business network, but also really developing a bit of a strategic urban mindset about your main streets and not just leaving them open to opportunity. Because what's happening is that Main Street environments are, as we know, there's so much retail which is now migrated to online, that the blend of businesses in our main streets, we've got retail and hospitality and such kind of decline, and service businesses taking over. So human service businesses that have to be delivered by a person. So massage, nails, hairdresser, a dentist. They're starting to take over our main streets. But they're not activating the streetscape. They're actually creating, they're decreasing the vibrancy in the day-to-day visitation of those urban environments. So looking strategically at the blend of your main street, when vacancies occur, you've developed a strategy. Actually, this is the identity. This is the curated blend of mix that we see there's a gap. This is what we need here. We need more of this. Tattoo studios. Oh, whatever it is. More hospo. We see the seeds of a night economy. Let's strengthen that. So being strategic and having a plan. So if you're a place manager, if you're an economic development staff member working for council, or whether you're a business association, have a strategy in place for the future optimal blend to maximise the vibrancy and the ground plane activation of your main street. And don't just leave it open to chance. Oh, suddenly that's come up. Oh no, a dentist has moved in. That's come up. Oh, something else has moved in. You want to cultivate and attract businesses to optimise your ground plane environment. So have a strategy in place and then start strategically going out and trying to find the right business for your main street environment. It's not a commercial environment, it's not a shopping centre, so you can't control it, but you can have a strategy in place to actually seek that self-activating blend. So you don't have to invest in events, but actually you've got amazing businesses that spill into the street, that trade on the street, that provide great experiences, and you've cultivated and curated that self-activating, vibrant environment. But you need a strategy or it doesn't happen by accident.
Beautiful. I'm going to use a little microcosm to demonstrate a couple of those things, and that's Salamanca Market. So we have a optimal product mix that we actually try and achieve from our stallholders across that market. And it doesn't mean that somebody, 1 year it might be 40% this or 10% that, but we look at how we make sure that we've got a balance and it's spread throughout the market with both permanent stallholders and casual stallholders. And we look at emerging product. So the emerging product enables us to do an incubator or an innovator market test stall. So we've got 5 of those across the market. So a business that's not quite ripe might like to come and do some product testing. So we're using gaps in the market. So think about that with your main street, where you have temporary leases and pop-up shops, and really thinking about an innovation or an incubator launchpad type project that helps somebody just trial their model, because they might not be ready to sign up to that lease. And then I think the other key thing for me, which is sort of tying the two together, is that the system of your street is a complex system. And thinking about that multi-sensory approach to the street. So we've got a beautiful market that is in Bathurst Street every Sunday, which is a farm gate market. And I come from a commercial background, so the first thing I did was went and talked to all my customers, right, who are using these streets in our city. And one of the things that really surprised me was that Maddie, who runs Farmgate Market, once a month scrapes out, cleans and caches all of the bins in that street. And it shocked me that we weren't doing that. From a sensory perspective, it stank. Right? So she's actually deliberately using now a natural oil-based product that is environmentally friendly, but is actually putting a scent on the street. And that scent is her market scent. So really thinking about that multi-sensory. So smell is the first trigger for memory recall, sound is the second, and then sight. So really thinking about all of those elements of that street is a really great way to start to think about vibrancy. And then looking at stories and people. So layering that system. So who are our people, what stories do they have, and how do we share those stories?
Really well said, guys, and a really good opportunity into the next question, a segue in, is how do you actually engage with your businesses? I know there's so many of us here in the room that do it on a day-to-day basis. If there's any sort of tricks of the trade, please share with us.
The experts are probably sitting here in the room, right? Let's be perfectly honest. Look, the business associations in Victoria are just the best in the country, right? Kudos to you all. Give yourself all a pat on the back. We have the greatest, most dynamic pool of business associations and knowledge, which all the other states actually are seeking. So many people in Brisbane are like, how do you get a business association running? How do you do it? What do you do? And it's like, oh my goodness, come on down to Victoria. Let's introduce you to some amazing folks and we'll share the beautiful work being done by these incredible volunteers. Some of them paid, some of them unpaid, some of them blood, sweat and tears. It's a very diverse sort of environment out there. So engaging with the representative bodies is really important, but sometimes I think the best way to engage business is to go in there and have a face-to-face. Because everyone's so busy. And, you know, we all know that when we try and run workshops with businesses, it's really hard to get people to come unless it's pre-work. So often business breakfasts are the only way to actually get people to come because they're too busy. They're running a business. They're exhausted. Running a business is hard. It's tiring. It's taxing. It's emotionally and mentally taxing, let alone physically. So my favourite, just walk around, walk the beat, talk to people. I know it's paring it back to absolute common denominator, but don't be afraid. Just have a good old chinwag.
Yeah, good old go see. Yeah, go and spend time, go and talk to them, understand what they look like in their natural environment, go and observe the animal at work. And so I spent Saturday at Salamanca Market talking with stallholders, wandering around with my daughter. So she got a lot of freebies and that was awesome. But we also spent money, you know. So I was carrying bags, I was engaging in their conversations, understanding what their needs and issues were and also contributing. So they saw that I was real and I was, you know, there for a reason, which was fantastic, and had a key set of issues that helped me move this week into an action plan.
Yeah, and probably the only other thing I'd add to those fabulous answers is tell their stories. You know, make them the heroes of the street. And I was chatting with Amanda from Central Launceston Marketing, and she mentioned that they'd just done a quick case study on one of their traders, and within 48 hours they had 8,000 likes on Facebook. So people want to know this stuff, and particularly start with the really good ones, the heroes, but tell their stories and let people know who they are and why they're doing this and why they're passionate about their business, and try and share the love. You know, find some other traders, and it might be, you know, 2 a month or 4 a month or 1 a week, whatever it is, but people want to know that stuff. And again, that's differentiating with online, with shopping centres, because they're real people and people want to know their story and why they're doing what they do.
Agreed, thank you. Brings us to the last question before we open it to Q&A. I'd be really keen to hear from each and every one of you again of a location or a destination or a main street somewhere here in Australia that's doing it well. It doesn't need to be a metro. You've all come from different areas today, so I'd be keen to hear if you've got a few examples of someone doing it really well.
Oh, look, I'll jump in. I'm not a shy beast, am I? I thought about this question in advance, and very much like Katy was talking about, is anyone here from South Melbourne Market today? No hands have gone up. That's a shame. South Melbourne Market, if you went there 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it's very, very, very different beast to today. And they have really embraced the experience economy so well. It's just magical. They have a space, as you mentioned, so they've got an incubator space called SoMe, which is supporting the entrepreneurial efforts of up-and-coming makers or fashionistas or, you know, Cupcake or Huspo, or a whole host of different things go in there. Temporary spaces where they have lots of turnover and change. It's very hard for them to manage that. It's very labour-intensive, but it's completely worth it because our markets are the support the entrepreneurial retail world, right? So everyone who has a big shop front, chances are they started in a market. This is the purpose, and they still fulfil that purpose to this day. But anyway, so South Melbourne Market, they embrace that, but what they're doing is they're working with their traders, and it's very much one-on-one, and they're building their capacity to understand that experience matters. And so they're coaching traders to embrace the experience economy. So, for example, they worked really hard with the burek provider to, instead of make that burek behind the closed doors or in back of house, that they moved it to the front and they put in a window. And then next thing you know, you've got queues out the door of the market all the way down the street at lunchtime. So they work with the French patisserie to actually put on display the work, so that going and viewing, you're part of the experience of the making. Then that object that you queue to buy, it tastes better because you feel like you were part of it. So they're coaching traders one by one to actually improve their shopfront presentation to make it experiential, and it's working. Have you seen the queues out the door from the French patisserie on the weekends? Raoul's here, he has. They go all the way, the length inside the market. They have to put barricades up and out the door and around the corner. It's like Loon, but in the middle of the market itself. So they are cultivating their economic ecosystem to be experiential, and it's the traders who are resistant to change that they're finding economically they're struggling. It's those that are embracing that change and living it are doing so well. And then the collective impact of those who have embraced the experience economy and how they operate as a business is elevating the whole market experience for everyone. So even those traders who are a bit more conservative and haven't come to the table yet, they're benefiting from the experience economy they don't even realise. But if they don't change and adapt their offer, they will lose their market share and they will struggle to compete. It's just the world we live in now. So South Melbourne Market, it's a fabulous place.
I'm going to head there next time I'm here, I think. Yeah, I need a burek. So I think in terms of people that are doing it well, I actually wanted to share people that have changed over time. So I used to work in Martin Place in Sydney, and George Street is a transformed place. So I went back and stayed a couple of weekends ago, and to see the light rail and its destination points in George Street, and what they're doing to open onto the street with what was essentially a stack of buildings that were office buildings with no life. People would come and go. So it was quite interesting, particularly around sort of Wynyard Station, that they've started to really move outside. They've started to really think about at what point people would alight from the light rail. And CBD of Sydney, even pre-COVID, was an absolute ghost town post about 6:30-ish in the evening, depending on when people finished. So to see it vibrant, to hear it noisy and hear it, music and people, it was quite amazing to see that change. So I think they've done really great work in reimagining that street front in George Street. So that's a good one to have a look at. Excuse me, and then from a commercial perspective, hotels have been in the experience economy for such a long time. So really to think about who you are when you go and visit a hotel and what segment of the market you might be representing to them, and then pretend to be someone else and see how the friction in that experience actually plays out for you. Right. So they were expecting at the A by Adina in George Street to have a business person arrive. I arrived with my 12-year-old daughter in tow, and there were no decent, ports or appropriate spots within the room that actually enabled her to be part of that room, because I was friction in the system. So she actually did not enjoy the stay at all. They had a pool that had a horizon view, which she thought was amazing. And at 7 o'clock at night, the lights were off and there were no towels and it was freezing cold. So that shows you the difference between the experience. But had I gone, at 3 in the afternoon to have my cocktail, it would probably have been amazing poolside. So it's good to actually be the antithesis of what you think that experience should be, so you can see the rub.
Just going to try and squeeze 2 quick ones in. Launceston is my hometown, and I think what I'm really excited to see is some fantastic food and beverage businesses and many other traders as well. But Launceston, if you don't know, is one of the UNESCO cities of gastronomy, so there's only 50 in the world. And Launceston has an incredibly productive region around it, and these businesses are really maximising that produce, but also telling the story. So you don't want to come to Tasmania to go to Sydney. You want to see Tasmanian produce, you want to see clean and green, you want to see the mountains, and all that other stuff. So it's really trading on the region and the place as its real selling point. And the other one is a small town centre in Perth that was really, really struggling. And their worst night of the week was Monday night. And the crazy butcher said, we're going to create Monday night markets. And everyone said, there's no way anyone's going to go out on Monday night. It's dead. There was literally 2 businesses that were open in this street of probably 50 or 60 businesses on a Monday night. So, of course, no one goes out. They created very successful Monday night markets, which were mainly food trucks, but it meant over a period of time, instead of 2 businesses opening on a Monday night, 40 businesses opened, and it turned into one of their best trading nights of the week. And that was driven by local people and local traders. And it turned, a 5-day business into a 7-day business. And they had to put on more staff on Monday nights because it was so popular. They were getting 4,000 or 5,000 people to turn up when previously there would have been tumbleweeds. So, yeah, don't underestimate the power of passion and determination and creativity to make your town centre better.
I know it's never too late to create a new routine, a new ritual.
Good point.
Agreed. I really like that story, Dean. I might throw one in there. So I grew up in regional Victoria in Bendigo. And if you actually think back Bendigo 20 years ago, no one wanted to visit. They've recently had the Elvis exhibition and they were pretty much sold out, including weekdays. So Bendigo, I think, has gone through this amazing transition to a place where, as I said, 20 years ago, everyone wanted to leave and now everyone is moving back there. So I think there are definitely some great regional areas that are doing it really well. And I know there's state government involvement there as well, but I know there's some great council staff and community leaders that are doing some amazing work. So that brings us to the end of our questions that we have. We'd love to throw it open. I believe Liz is walking around with the microphone. Our amazing speakers are here, so if anyone's got any questions, please just feel free to raise your hand and we'll take them.
Hello, I'm Amanda from Central Launceston Marketing, one of Dean's neighbours and Katy's island people. I'm wanting to ask, if you had the choice of putting resources into events, and I know Valli, you just mentioned the hazard of one-off events, or putting more constant, say, extra resources into busking and other types of temporary activations, which way would you go if you were going to look at an activations plan?
I can share what my experience is. So joined Hobart City Council 6 months ago. We had a fairly decent size events and activation team, as well as an arts and culture team. What we're doing at the moment is going back to place-based and really looking at, do we have place management in place? What does the curation for the entire year actually look like? And then who can we partner with or collaborate with in order to create the opportunity and the vibrancy? So when you look around the city or when you look around your city and your streets, people will be giving it a crack to attempt to create vibrancy themselves. So I think what's obvious to me, or what's become really evident to me, is that we feel that or as a council, we feel that we need to do it all ourselves. And that results in a really poor quality delivery, although sometimes we get it magically right. So we think that we're going to get it right all the time and double down on those employees. I just think, have a couple of key strategic things that you do invest in, and the rest of the time, partner the hell out of it. Collaborate as much as you can to create vibrancy and at as lower cost as possible. That's where I'm headed with Hobart.
Yeah, I mean, we as Village Well and all the work I've done within council and within consulting and co-design and stuff before, I've done so much work with bodies such as yourself around developing activation strategies. I would go boom, boom, boom. I'd carve your budget into 3. I'd go a third of the budget goes to delivering training and supporting the ecosystem so that they can do this work themselves. I'd go a third of the budget goes to co-facilitating, match funding people, so co-delivering and supporting people. And a third of the budget goes for actually delivering some big whiz-bang things at a very high fabulous quality. So with everything you do yourself, you also are investing in the ecosystem and helping them to do it themselves, or you're just creating a rod for your own back where they'll expect you to do more and more and more. So I always like to think rule of three, divide it in three, and make sure capacity building gets a third of your attention, because that's how you create a self-sustaining, self-activating ecosystem, and you stop making your work harder for yourself.
And don't just order from a placemaking catalogue. Town centres go through ups and downs, so it depends on where your town centre is at the moment. Sometimes an event, in a strategic sense, might be a way to reset and get people excited and generate momentum and generate belief, not only in the people who come along, but also the traders. So sometimes events are good, but don't just use it as a simple tick the box, everyone else does events, so we've got to do it as well. Work with the strengths of the place, and sometimes it might be doing other stuff. So yeah, don't just treat it like a catalogue that you just order from. You really got to be thinking about it, working with and collaborating with local people and being strategic, like you said, Valli.
Yeah, and I always like to ensure that you've done your research in advance, so place research, visitation research, whatever, but you have a strong understanding of what's actually happening in the area and what are some problems that you can solve through your activation, through your events, through your capacity building, so that you're leaving that place in a better condition when you leave, right? So ensure that, you're not just activating for the sake of it.
Well said, everyone. Have we got any more questions? There's another hand. There's a few hands now.
Hi, thanks. It's a really basic question, but you've talked a lot about identifying the strengths in a place. How do you do that?
Getting out on the ground and having a look for yourself, and hopefully with other people as well, but then digging deeper and asking. So sometimes the strength, I had a little 12-year-old boy who was in one of our placemaking sessions, and he said, is motivation, is that an asset or a skill? And sometimes it's just tapping into that passion or that motivation or the time that someone might have. And that's why if you're just thinking traders are very time poor and have plenty of things on their plate, but there might be people out there in the community. They could be young creatives, they could be students, they could be retirees. They're the people you're trying to find, and they're the strengths you're trying to mobilise. So think outside the box with your strengths. It's not just about the physical. We often talk about hardware and software, just like a computer. If your place hardware is terrible and the software is great, obviously your place is not going to work. So think about strengths in many different aspects. It could be physical, it could be the look and feel of the place, could be the assets that you have, but sometimes, particularly the software, the people, you've got to find out, you've got to build the connections and relationships and build the trust, and that's when you discover it.
I always like to think in my early phases of a project, 3 ways to identify strengths: observation, go there, get on the ground, walk around, look, experience yourself. Second, engagement, talk to the local people because they're the experts in their place, talk to all facets of that ecosystem. And third, data. So place data is something which is really cheap these days and really easy, and you'll be surprised who the customer of your place actually is. Don't just rely on the residents and the traders, actually get place visitation data. Project I was working on recently, we had made assumptions and we made observations and we presumed we knew exactly who the customers of this place were, and then we actually looked at the customer visitation data, and we didn't just get the data of where they'd come from, how they travelled, how long they spent in there. We also got the customer profiles, and we discovered that the visitors of this precinct in the city actually represented the 4 wealthiest customer profiles of all in the entire customer profiling system were the key visitors of this place, and they were the workers and the professionals of this place. But we were making our assumptions on the students, the teachers, this and that. And it turns out actually the visitation catchment and the customers were extremely wealthy and had a lot of disposable income, the most wealthy of all, in fact. So we can use that to think about that economic ecosystem. And what is the retail we put in there? What is the activation? But also we identified, wow, the people who should be the prime customer of this place aren't represented at all in the data. So we need to do more to attract the residents, the students, and to, keep them there longer, because right now they're not there. So data is your customer profiles and your residents and the catchment, how far they're travelling and how long they're staying there. It's really cheap. It's really cheap to get a place data report these days. And if anyone wants to know who we use, I won't be spruiking individual names right now, but feel free to grab me in the break and I'll let you know who we use for our place data sources. And it's great.
I did a bit of a kamikaze under the table data collection in the Huon Valley, so south of Hobart, when I was in the tourism space, and they were talking about we can't find the data, we can't afford the data. It's not something that we could, invest in, and they were particularly accommodation businesses. So we just started this process of, okay, so the busy season is the busy season. Great. Let's not stress about asking our customers questions about who they are and where they come from. Let's just have a pad of post-it notes at the front desk, so when somebody talks to somebody in a generalised conversation, the words that they use, write them down and chuck them in a box next to the register. Just write them down, chuck them in a box. And at the end of busy season, get them all out and you've got the voice of your customer. So you've got every word that they use about the place in that box, and encourage your staff to just write it down and drop it in a box. Just collect that data in a really lo-fi way. And it was quite fascinating. It actually became essentially the words that they used in their campaigns, in their wayfinding, everything. So just really thinking differently from a lo-fi perspective, how you capture that data. It also gives you the strengths.
Great answers, thank you. We do have time, I reckon, for one more question. There was another hand up somewhere, I'm hoping. Perhaps not. There's one at the back, one at the front.
Thanks, everyone. My name's Nicole from Reactivate Consulting. There's been so many great things brought up today, but one that comes up a lot is curation of retail. And if there's a bid model or maybe there's a precinct model with one owner, that can be fairly straightforward. But we've got a lot of people from council here, and also as a consultant, it's something that comes up that everyone says, well, you've got to curate. I'd love to know another model, if anyone has one or an example, that council has delivered curation through a vehicle that's not a bid or a large land ownership body or organisation.
So we've done a lot of place strategies where we identify, for example, let's just make a hypothetical Main Street. Every hypothetical Main Street does not have a homogenous experience of this entire length of road, which often is many kilometres long. Actually, what you have is a whole bunch of different sub-precincts, and each sub-precinct has a bit of a character and identity, a flavour or an offer of its own. So we'll go in and doing our research, which we just talked about before, I won't go on it again. We'll identify those sub-precincts, and then we'll literally, we'll create a place vision for the whole Main Street, but with real really clearly defined experience statements, place propositions, retail blend, vibe, mix, and customers for each of those sub-precincts. And then council can strategically, when there are opportunities, work with land owners, property owners, to actually strengthen those propositions and those individual characters, which actually make those pockets and those sub-precincts more attractive, which improves the overall dynamic. So we've done a lot of placemaking strategies. Sometimes it's land use planning reference. Sometimes it's more like the vibe and the experience and literally the kind of the human experience on the ground plane, depending on the needs of the project. But yeah, placemaking frameworks and placemaking strategies are actually all about that. Essentially, that framework will then become a prospectus that you can use to market those precincts to attract those people and get them into the key locations that will actually improve the overall blend and the overall experience.
One interesting idea, I can't remember what place this was, but they had a bunch of empty storefronts. And what they thought, well, if the businesses aren't coming to us, we need to entice them. So they put up decals on all the vacant windows and made it into a cafe or a bar or a dress shop or whatever it was, and saw what the reaction was. And the reaction was, I really do wish this was a bar or a restaurant or a shop. And then they could go out and do that spruiking and get those businesses to come there. And I can't remember all the details, but it was incredibly cheap to do. really innovative and creative, and it actually did make a difference. So I'm intrigued to see
That was
if
a
would
Candy
work.
Chang project from the 90s.
Oh, was
I
it?
wish
Yeah.
this was a whatever, dot, and there were stickers and people were slapping them all over
This
the
one I
bacon
think was
chocolate.
even just going to the next level of actually
Oh,
creating what
painting.
the look like. Yeah, it was like a painting or a photoshopped image that this actually was a business inside. You could look through the windows and see what it could be.
So I'm a trained futurist, so I've done quite a bit of work with the Institute for the Future out of Silicon Valley. And I develop stories of the future, particularly with organisations starting to look at it from a city perspective. And if you create a minimum of 4 stories of the future across a range of stakeholder groups or segments, what they start to do is curate or chart their preferred future through that. So if you start to tell those stories in ways that are provocative, perhaps asking questions or posing questions, it starts to get people to go, actually, we can self-determine our future here, and maybe what we do is we start to actually affect that outcome or that future outcome. Recently, we did a project called City Pilots, which was a experiential art program that was quite low cost. And one of the artists actually created plaques that were commemorative events from the future. So they were 2035, and it was commemorating the Battle of Elizabeth Street and the fallen in Elizabeth Street. Little QR code down the bottom that enabled people to engage with it and start to interpret what that story might be, that we had a Battle of Elizabeth Street. Now that kind of seems quirky and out there, and one of the laws of futures work is that every story about the future should at first appear completely ridiculous. So you start to stimulate that play and that story and that wonder about what the future could look like, and then it starts to curate itself. And again, back it up with data, understand who's coming in, what are they doing, how are they interacting, and see which one of those preferred future stories starts to come true as a totally out there kind of model for curation.
Really well said. Thank you. I might wrap it up there. So first I'm going to thank our speakers. You've been phenomenal, and thank you for sharing all your information and taking the time to be with us today. Valli Morphett, Katy Cooper and Dean Cracknell. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you.